Talk about the other Democratic candidate who is quite honestly heating up. And I mean, she's rising in the polls and she's beginning to look more and more like a serious challenger. And that is Elizabeth Warren. And I got to talk about Liz Warren because I feel like we've said this on the show or we've been hinting at this. I know, Matt, you've been on this tip for a while now, but I think like it really needs to come to the fore now that Elizabeth Warren, for whatever admirable qualities you may see in her personally or her campaign or any of the policies or plans that she is so, eloquently championing, it has to be said that,
she is a massive dork.
Well, it's not that she's a dork, but like, okay.
No, I really think, and I'm standing by this, she is a dork, and that is incredibly important. Like, if you think that her policies are more likely to appeal to people than Bernie's, I disagree, but that's one thing. But fundamentally, she's a terrible, terrible candidate. She blinks, she flinches every time. She cannot win. I have no idea why she's still running. It is deeply embarrassing to watch.
Well, she's running because she's coming on pretty strong in all these polls.
Blip. I think it's a blip.
Okay, well, okay.
We're of two minds about this on Chapo. I am of the we got to watch out for Biden because that drunk has been blessed with luck somehow. And then other people are more worried about Warren. I don't think anyone who doesn't own a Prius gives a shit about Elizabeth Warren. The thing is,
I don't think that that's mutually exclusive. I think I don't think that it's more likely that Warren's going to get the nomination than Bernie. She's going to deny Bernie the nomination, then Biden gets it. So they're both concerned for.
Okay, I agree with that.
I do want to point out that Biden is notoriously a teetotaler. He does not drink at all.
Okay, well, I don't believe it.
Okay, great. In terms of that,
I don't believe it.
Who else doesn't?
Donald
Trump, yeah. But Donald Trump has never drank, right?
I think Biden's the same.
No way.
He had a drunk dad. One of the classic Irish dry drunks because his dad wasn't drunk.
Oh,
so he's like
okay.
Joseph B. Kennedy, also a teetotaler.
Yeah.
Okay.
It didn't sound from
Sorry. Correction. Update. Joe Biden, not an alcoholic.
Fine.
He just seems that. Okay. So back to Warren. Like, okay, you'll see where I'm getting with this. But like, if you are on the fence maybe and listening to the show about Warren versus Sanders, what are we to make of this article that came out in Politico today? Headline: Warren emerges as potential compromise nominee. Centrists who once said the senator would lead the party to ruin are coming around her as an alternative to Bernie Sanders. The article begins. There was a time not so long ago when leading Democrats warned that Elizabeth Warren's, quote, fantasy-based blue state populism risked leading the party to ruin. But in a revealing tell of how far her campaign has come since its early February launch, some unlikely voices in the center of the party are growing more comfortable with the idea of Warren as the nominee. It's a sign of how the ideological lanes of the 2020 primary have blurred and overlapped and of the steady progress Warren is making as a candidate. But it's also a statement on Bernie Sanders, Warren's top rival for progressive votes. Sanders continues to face significant resistance from within the party, and nowhere more so than among the moderates and establishment players who blanch at his talk of democratic socialism. Warren, on the other hand, is gaining traction among those who once rejected her muscular vision of liberalism. She's drawn notice for her wide-ranging I have a plan for that policy playbook, which has just enough growth and opportunity center-left measures to earn her a serious look from her former detractors. The Massachusetts senator may be out of sync with party centrists, but she's drawn at least one sharp line with Sanders that is resonating with prominent moderate voices as she surges into the top tier in national and early state polls. Quote, one is a democratic capitalist narrative, said Matt Bennett, a co-founder of Third Way, a centrist think tank that convened a conference of party insiders in South Carolina this week, designed to warn about the risks of a nominee whose views are out of the political mainstream. The quote, the other is a socialist narrative. Third Way, which isn't backing a candidate, famously torpedoed Warren in a widely read 2013 op-ed that exposed the party's ideological fissures on entitlements. Quote, nothing would be more disastrous for Democrats than to adhere to Warren's brand of economic populism, wrote two of the think tank's leaders in a piece that drew condemnation from progressive. Today, however, Third Way is learning to live with Warren, even as it embarks on a mission to ensure the Democratic nominee doesn't stray too far to the left. So,
I do not think, though, they think that she is a contender either.
Well, that's the thing. Is that
what I'm
some
getting
people
at.
have... Because Bernie pointed us on Twitter, probably not him, one of his staff members obviously said, like, oh, this is showing that, the establishment is really only threatened by me. And people were saying, no, Bernie, this is a trap. They don't really support Warren. They're just saying they do in order to set you against each other. And I say to that, how is that better? How does that make Warren's candidacy anything other than a fucking spoiler? I mean, that's
right.
Like best case scenario, they're being cynical here and they don't actually support her, but they want to use her to fuck with Bernie. Yeah. Worst case scenario, they generally have sort of.
They're saying, yeah, we'd be okay with this, knowing very well that she wouldn't.
Well, right. I mean, but because they know what the dynamic is, and they know what the dynamic means, Biden wins no matter what. But honestly, they could be reconciled to Warren. And I think one of the reasons it might make them think that is because even though she's got a plan for everything, the one thing she doesn't have a plan for is health care. When asked about Medicare for all, she suddenly turns into this sort of this person who has never even thought of the idea before and is welcome to any answer from anyone. She hasn't put any thought into it. She doesn't have an incredibly detailed plan. She says, well, maybe we raise this cap. Maybe we lower that cap. Maybe the employers pay more. Maybe they pay less. We'll figure it out.
It was
all of a sudden, all the specificity and granular policy shit goes out the window when it comes to one issue that directly challenges a key constituency of the Democratic elite.
Here's what I'll say. Like the idea that she's a spoiler, I mean, that was the argument made against Bernie Sanders running against Hillary Clinton. So I'm saying
Warren, there's a two-person race. You can't spoil that. Okay. The people don't know what spoiler means. A spoiler is somebody who comes in a two-person race
to
deny
car.
one of the other people the candidacy. If there's two people running, one of them, if he'd beaten Hillary, he wouldn't have spoiled it for Hillary. He would have the nomination. He wouldn't have given the thing to.
Okay, I would just though stay away from like the spoiler narrative merely because I think people resent being treated as if they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I just think there's a very small number of people for whom Elizabeth Warren is appealing, and I think the Third Way Project or whatever is very aware of that, and they get to support her knowing that she won't win, but it makes them look more reasonable.
Also, so people have to get around the idea that they can't both win.
No, there's one president. There's going to be one.
Who can get nominated.
There's going to be one.
This idea is like, I like them both. Well, tough shit. Make a fucking pick. Get off the fucking pot.
Make a pick, and I'm gonna get to what you alluded to, Matt. Like you can read this one of two ways, but I'm gonna just keep going on here. Jim Kessler, one of the authors of the 2013 piece warning that Warren would lead the party off the populist cliff, raved about the senator's performance last weekend at the Black Economic Alliance Candidate Forum in South Carolina. Elizabeth Warren kills it at Black Econ Alliance Candidate Forum. Love her entrepreneurship fund, the Third Way co-founder tweeted Saturday. I don't agree with Medicare for all. I mean, neither does Warren, apparently. I don't agree with free college, but her consumer protection policies are great. I think she has a good infrastructure plan.
Consumer protection. What a bitch out.
I think she has a good infrastructure plan, said self-described moderate Democrat Reagan Gray, a healthcare policy and political consultant attending the Third Way conference. I absolutely know and believe people are taking a second look at her. She now seems to be getting herself away from the Bernie Sanders grouping. People are taking a second look at her and saying, some of her policies are good. Maybe she isn't like Bernie. Skipping ahead. I think there was a perception, and I'm not saying that's accurate, but that she would only be able to speak to liberal parts of the country, Jen Psaki, who served as White House communications director in the Obama administration, said. But skeptics now increasingly view Warren as the alternative to Bernie Sanders on the progressive wing of the party, and also someone, when you listen to her policies, they're palatable to people who wouldn't have thought they were palatable to them. Going on here, what Warren has tapped into is that most Democrats, it's not about ideology or liberalism, it's about the economy's out of balance. Nibbling around the edges and offering stale, old Democratic ideas of raising the minimum wage and shoring up Medicare and Social Security are just insufficient to dealing with the scale and scope of the problems we're facing in our country, said Dan Gerstein, who worked as a speechwriter on the presidential and vice presidential campaigns of former Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman. But she's doing it in a way that doesn't necessarily demonize business, but talks about the bad actors in capitalism. And again, very much differentiating herself from Bernie. The bad actors in capitalism. If capitalism was a movie, it would be The Fucking Room, okay? They're all bad actors. She's doing it in a way that doesn't suggest she's a socialist or she wants to kind of blow up the economy, he said. For the Democratic establishment and many moderates, that's code for Sanders, the one candidate they cannot abide as the nominee. Like many centrists, Bennett, the Third Way co-founder, views Sanders as destined to lose against Trump. But Warren is a different story. We really like the idea of using the government to rectify market failure. And that's what she's about, Bennett said. We don't agree on everything.
It is what she's about.
But she's fundamentally rowing in the same direction.
That is literally, she said this over and over again. She said that's why that she left the Republican Party. She said it wasn't actually serving the markets. They're correct.
So to echo what Matt said, you can look at this one of two ways. If you are someone who supports Warren or is on the fence maybe about Warren versus Sanders, you can view this as all of these people are cynically lying about how much they like her and about how much they've come around on her because they're hedging their bets against the fact that Joe Biden may, hug a Ku Klux Klan member on stage at some time in the near future or brag about how many people he's personally sent to jail. So if that's the case, you have to ask yourself, well, why are they lying?
Right, exactly.
Why are they hedging their bets in this way? And why have they decided that Warren is palatable to them now?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then it's just, okay, what if they're telling the truth? Well, then, if that's the case, that they're telling the truth about her and this accurately represents what they believe and what she stands for, is that what you want?
Yeah.
Is that what you really want?
Mm-hmm. Someone that these ghouls think is acceptable?
If you are on the fence, like I said, about Warren or Sanders, I think you have to really ask yourself what the opportunity here is and what your duty is as someone of conscience. Do you want someone who's palatable or who can compromise with the third way wing of the Democratic Party? Or do you want someone who is their literal nightmare? Someone who they cannot abide?
Yeah.
Someone who is persona non grata to every think tank and lobbyist in D.C.? I think you need to take seriously what that question really means. And going further, yes, Warren is very good at her I have a plan for that. Other than Medicare for all, she seems to have a lot of plans for everything. Not all of them are bad. Some of them I think are actually pretty good. The wealth tax, for instance, universal child care, I think is actually better than free college for a lot of reasons. But here's the thing. What is more important and more predictable than any plan that is outlaid or laid out or any of her plans about how to implement her plans, which is what people will always also bring up if you bring this up. What is a better indicator is not the plans you say you're going to enact, but who is your enemy and who hates you and who has hated you for a long time.
Well, and who you represent.
Yeah.
I don't think Warren really has any constituency at all. She likes to talk sort of vaguely about families or whatever, but fundamentally she's kind of a technocratic regulator. I'd love to see her regulating finance. I think she'd be good at that. But fundamentally, she's never really been committed to a base or to people. She doesn't like it when things are out of order, when there's clutter, when there's disarray, when things don't seem to be very balanced. That's her big enemy.
I mean, I think she has a base, but it's essentially media people. And the problem is that they do have an outsized influence, even if their numbers are pretty small. Because I feel like she is the choice for people who want to appear to be the people who want to appear to be in some way leftist, in some way disenchanted with the status quo, but just can't make
progressive is the word.
Exactly.
Yeah,
can't make the move. She's the fucking way station. She's the pick. And so a lot of people gravitated to her. Some of them earnestly, because at the end of the day, they're just not socialists, and so they are uncomfortable going that far. And some cynically, because they want to say, oh, you bros like Bernie, but here's someone who's actually to his left that you're not supporting, but she's a woman. Interesting. And they're literally just doing it out of a cynical desire to fight that war alone.
Most of them are cynics.
Yes.
And you have to...
I don't believe there are that many true Warren stans, especially because I remember when they were trying to draft her the first time around, and I attended a draft Warren thing, and I wrote a big fucking thing about it. You can read it at Salon. And honestly, it was a very lukewarm. Half the people I talked to there were just like...
Wait, Amber, they haven't scrubbed you from the Salon archives by now?
Nah. Yeah, I'm still out there. It's called Fear and Loathing on the Champagne Trail, and I drank all the free booze I could find.
Well, here's the thing. Again, we've told you this before, but be very wary of anyone who tells you that there's no meaningful difference between Warren and Sanders, because there is. And also, be doubly wary of anyone who tells you that Warren is actually to Bernie's left, because they are 100% playing you for a sucker. Yes. They are telling you that I think you're an idiot and can tell you anything because I have contempt for you. This is very well laid out. And again, just make what you will of that Politico piece. But again, I think you have to ask yourself, what is it about Warren and her campaign that is palatable either from a strategic standpoint or from an ideological standpoint to people who run the Democratic Party?
She's really good at one thing. She is hyper-focused on finance, banking, regulation. We're going to need someone like that. She's very economically literate, but fundamentally she's a left-wing Republican.
Well, yeah, actually, that's the last thing I want to say about Elizabeth Warren is, again, I admire a lot of what she stands for and a lot of things she said, but you have to ask yourself, why was she a Republican up until the late 90s?
That is fucked up.
I mean, when she was an adult during the Reagan and George H.W. Bush administration, what about those presidential administrations appealed to her morally or politically? Right. And what took her so long to come around?
Yeah. What was it about the Contras that she found so inspiring?
Well, I think her answer to that question is that they fucked up the economy.
Yeah.
Through deregulation.
She likes order.
Yeah. They fucked up capitalism for the rest of us. And again, it's not the bad actors. It's all one really shitty movie.